Welcome to another edition of Throwing Bagels. Kevin Mooney here with you alongside Chris Douglas. Hey, Chris.
Kevin, what's going on?
Hey, not too much. How about yourself?
Same old thing, living the dream.
Living the dream. Our third co-host, Jason Hamo, is on assignment. We have sent him to Plattsburgh to research the throwing of the tennis balls up there for a hockey game. So he'll come back to us with a report at some point in the near future. But joining us now on the Throwing Bagels podcast, he's a very busy guy, to say the least. Sports director and co-host of Bridge Street on NewsChannel 9 in Syracuse, also host of Orange Nation Weekly on NewsChannel 9 and daily on ESPN Radio Syracuse. It's Steve Infanti. Steve, thank you so much for joining us.
Great to be on with you guys. How are you? It's been a while, Kevin. We worked together many moons ago. How are things?
Many moons. What has it been? 15 years since.
It's been a minute, as they say. Yeah.
No, things have been great. That was actually my NewsChannel 9 was my last stop in the full-time media career for me, and I went from there to Cornell University. So I've been at Cornell ever since then. But it was great working at Channel 9. There were so many hardworking people there, both in front of and behind the camera. And Steve, you're undoubtedly one of those people. So it was a great.
Thank you. I appreciate saying that.
No, absolutely. It was a great pleasure working with you and with everyone else there. And with all these jobs you have, Steve, do you get any sleep or any time?
Not enough. I will tell you that. Not enough sleep, but I enjoy what I do, and it's hard to. I know I got a lot on my plate, but it's every time I think about, well, maybe I should take something off my plate. I'm like, well, what would that be? All the jobs are a little bit different, and they present a little bit of a different challenge, and so I love what I do, and yes, I'm busy, but it's a good kind of busy.
Mm-hmm. So you wrap up your nightly sportscast. What time are you in bed, and then what time do you have to get up for Bridge Street?
Yeah, so the way this works is that I do the 11 o'clock show 3 days a week. Oh. So as part of my responsibilities as sports director, I would do the 4, 5, 6, 11 every day. Then when I took Bridge Street on, just to make it so that I wasn't, literally killing myself. The folks here at NewsChannel 9, they were, kind enough to say, all right, well, if you're going to do Bridge Street, and that's great, we want to make sure that you're not getting too burned out. So they give me 2 11s off per week. It'll fluctuate. It's generally when there's not as much going on. So, Fridays, I'm always going to be here for Friday Night Fever and our high school coverage. I'm usually here Mondays during football season because that's our Orange Nation show. So we'll work it in. I'll take a couple shows off. But to answer your question, I do have, 3 really long days during the week where I get up for Bridge Street. I've got a 3-year-old at home, so I'm up, 7-ish in the morning. Okay. Maybe when he leaves for daycare, I may doze off for another half hour or so. But I'm to Channel 9 by 9 a.m., get ready to go on the air by 10. The show's 10 to 11. Take a little bit of a break, go on radio from 12 to 2, and then make my way here to Channel 9 and do the 6 o'clock show, take a dinner break, get ready and do it again for 11. So 3 days a week, I'm going from 9 a.m. to midnight. I'll get in bed. You remember the job, Kevin. It's hard to leave the station and immediately shut off the brain and go to sleep. So if I'm asleep by 1, that's a normal night, I would say. Get home by 12:30, kind of unwind, watch a little TV, try to get to sleep by 1, sleep 1 to 7, and then, like I said, maybe I'll catch a half hour here or there, to try and make up for weekends. I try to go to bed early and try to recuperate, recharge the batteries, and get ready to do it all over again.
Well, one of those things you work on is, of course, Orange Nation. So you talk a lot about Syracuse athletics. Let's talk about one of those sports right now, SU football, and a note to you listening to our podcast. We did record this with Steve before the SU football season began. They're playing at Colgate, they're hosting Colgate, on September 2nd. So we recorded it before then. So at this time, we don't know if Syracuse is going to start 1-0 or 0-1. Hopefully it's the former. Who knows?
If they are 0-1, Kevin, and lose the Colgate, pray for me on the radio here.
Yeah, that would be a bad thing.
Yeah, this is an excellent point. So let's say 1-0. Let's say they'll start 1-0.
Let's say that. Yeah, I think that's let's say that.
So, but like last year, the team started 6-0, but then finished off with a record of 7-6. Injuries down the stretch were a big contributor to that. How will the team look to rebound from a disappointing finish to last year?
Yeah, I think you hit it on the head. I mean, I think injuries had a lot to do with it. Some will look at that and say it's an excuse. It's an excuse, but it's still the reality, right? I mean, it's still a reason for what happened down the stretch. They started 6-0. They were playing great football. They got banged up. The injuries. It seemed like every week. No joke. Early in the year, every week they were losing someone to a season-ending injury. So by the time they got in the middle of the season, they were down 6-7 starters that were out for the rest of the season. And, they didn't handle it well. And depth has been an issue. I mean, and that's not just been a Dino Babers thing. I mean, depth has been an issue here really going back to Coach Pete, which is the last time they were good on a regular basis, year in and year out on a consistent basis was when Paul Pasqualoni was here. They let him go. And, since then it's been just about 20 years of mediocrity. And, the fan base around here had to live through the Greg Robinson era. And, the depth really left the program during that time. And Doug Marrone tried to build it back up. And, everybody looks at what Doug Marrone did and got an NFL job for what he did here. And he went to a couple of bowl games. We got to keep in mind, Doug Marrone was a 500 coach here. I mean, I think that gives you an idea how difficult it can be to win here. And he had the benefit of playing in the Big East. Now they're in the ACC. And I think it's a more difficult conference, certainly, than the Big East was in the end of the Big East days. You're navigating transfer portal, you're navigating NIL, and COVID hit New York State in particular very hard. And again, you saw Dino kind of build up 4-8. He popped with that 10-win season, and they really haven't been able to capitalize on that until last year. They got back to a bowl game, and I'm circling back to your point, Kevin, about how they started 6-0. They were ranked for the first time since 2001. So I think it was, I look at last year, yes, it was a disappointing finish, but I also look at it as a step forward for this program because they did some things, they hadn't started 6-0 in a really long time, going back to the Sugar Bowl year in '87. They hadn't been ranked since 2001. They, hadn't been to a bowl game since the 10-win season. So I think they took a step forward. Injuries were a big reason why the second half of the season fell apart. Now, SU fans will say, something's got to change because it wasn't just last year. They've stumbled to close out the year several times under Dino Babers, and injuries have played a factor. Going into November, his November record is not good at all. So why is that? I think, some of it is depth, certainly. Some of it is recruiting. Some of it is bad luck, let's be honest. And when you play the Clemsons and Florida States of the world, they're physical team. They're really good for a reason. So you are going to get banged up. And I'll be honest with you, as I look at this schedule this year, the thing that I'm most concerned about is the fact that they play Clemson, North Carolina, and Florida State back to back to back. So in the span of 15 days, they are playing those three teams. So it's 3 Saturdays, right? But it's 15 days. They're playing Clemson, North Carolina, Florida State, the 3 best teams in the conference, the 3 teams that are ranked from the conference. So I do worry that, they may get off to a 4-0 start. That Purdue game is very big in the first month, and I'm sure we'll circle back to that. But they could be 4-0, and then they could go into that gauntlet of those 3 games. And then what happens? Okay, maybe you're 4-3, but how are you health-wise? Are your main players intact? What does your 2 deep look like compared to what it looked like at the beginning of the season? So I think that is my biggest concern is, what did they learn from last year? The physical stuff you can't really do much about, the injuries, but you can do something about the resiliency and being able to bounce back and stop the bleeding. And last year they just could not stop the bleeding. When things started to go south, they went south. Can they do a better job this year? Because you're probably, if we're all being honest, you're probably going to lose those 3 games in the middle of the year. They're going to be heavy underdogs in all of them. Can they bounce back from that stretch? And then their last 5 games are all toss-up games. They're all winnable. So can they bounce back from that stretch and go 4-1 down the stretch, 3-2? That's probably enough to get to a bowl game and maybe even a pretty good bowl game.
So you mentioned Dino Babers. There's been a lot of talk in the offseason about, what's going to happen with him if the team doesn't do well. Does he keep his job if they don't make a bowl game this year?
Oh, Chris, that is a great question. We've been talking about that quite a bit on our radio show. So here's the thing. I know some people. I'll circle back to your question, but some people have asked if 6-6 is good enough. And in my opinion, it's an emphatic yes, because you look back, and I know that when Marone left and Schaefer took over, technically they went to back-to-back bowl games. They did. I mean, they did in Marone's last year, Schaefer's first year. But the same coach has not gone to back-to-back bowl games in Syracuse since Paul Pasqualoni in the late 90s.
That's
so
crazy.
If Dino does that, I think you have to take that into account. So even if it's 7-6 and then they go 6-6, regardless of whether or not they win the bowl game, if they go to back-to-back bowl games, Chris, I'm saying yes. He absolutely will be back, and frankly, I think he should be back. If they go 5-7, what is the reason for that? Like if Garrett Schrader – there's a few guys on this team they can't afford to lose. You can't afford to lose Garrett Schrader. Right. You can't afford to lose Oronde Gadsden. Probably on defense, you can't afford to lose a guy like Marlo Wax. If those guys are healthy and you're going 5-7, I think that's different than, God forbid, Schrader goes down, breaks his leg in the second game of the year and they're without their starting quarterback. I think at least you could point to that and say, well, this is why that happened. But if there's not really a good reason why they went 5-7 or didn't get to a bowl game, he may be in a little bit of trouble. I think he's a good coach. I do. And I think he should be back. I think he's on the verge of getting this thing going in the right direction. I think we saw a step forward last year. I think we will continue to see a step forward this year. Going back to Doug Marone, he had a 500 record at Syracuse. Dino right now, if you take out the COVID year where they almost didn't play football that year, they almost didn't have enough offensive linemen to field a team. They went 1-10. It was a disaster of a year for a lot of reasons. I think we should take that out, in my opinion. Like, I think COVID should be, all right, there was a COVID year. You can't hold that against him. He's 4 games below 500. Doug Marone was 500. He's 4 games below 500 outside of that year. And, again, he's got some really good wins on his resume. Right off the bat, he beat a Virginia Tech ranked opponent his very first year. We know he beat Clemson. He won those 10 games. And I think if the COVID year, listen, it didn't go well, and I think that it was a couple-year process building themselves back from COVID. Now I think, again, went from 5 wins to 7. I think we'll continue to see the build this year. So if they go 5-7, I think the noise is going to get a lot louder that he shouldn't be here. But my personal opinion is, listen, I think they're winning 6 or more. I think he will be back. And frankly, I think he should be back. I think, he's got this program pointed in the right direction. Now, listen, I know that it's got to come with wins and consistency. He always says, be consistently good, not occasionally great. This program needs to be consistently good. But I think he's the guy to make that happen for them.
Yeah, and like you said, it hasn't been consistently good since Coach P. Right. That's huge, really. You'd mentioned Garrett Schrader and Rondé Gadsden. 2 players that are absolutely keys, like you had said. Schrader's coming off his nagging elbow injury. It's just kind of been lingering for a couple of years. Is he going to be able to bounce back this year? Is that behind him now?
Boy, I hope so, Chris. And when they announced in the spring that he was going to sit out, have the surgery, and that the doctors had promised them, meaning the coaching staff, that if they listened to the doctors, he would be a better version of himself going into 2023. And I think we all chalked it up to, okay, it's a routine thing. He's getting it done. He's going to be just fine. Well, last week, Dino made it a point. He was asked about Garrett Schrader's health and the scrimmage, and the last scrimmage they had, and he said, he was not a full participant. He said, he's continuing to be on a pitch count. He said that they're going to ramp him up. They want to make his arm sore and see how he recovers from that. The fact that they're still in, and that may have been a part of the plan all along, but I guess the fact that they're still talking about it and that he's not out there as a full participant and 100%, I think that is a little bit of a concern. Now, they haven't publicly said it's a concern. They've said, this was, it's all part of the process, and we're building him back up, and we're getting that strength back in the arm and so on and so forth. that all sounds good, and I hope that's all it is. But the fact that he's not and again, remember, we're recording this prior to the Colgate game. He may go out against Colgate and throw for 5 touchdowns and put all this to rest. But right now, I think there is at least a question mark in my mind, Chris, about, how healthy is he? They need him to be healthy. He is. This team is at its best when he is able to do what he does. He was limited last year, not just through the air, but got nicked up a little bit in terms of his running game was taken away from him. He is at his best when he truly is a dual threat. And if he's not a dual threat, then they could be in a little bit of trouble.
Yeah, and hopefully he does stay healthy, because he's got a monster of a tight end to throw to in Rondé Gadsden. He is. He is spectacular. It's really basically, as far as they go, the team will go, it seems.
Yeah, I think that's fair to say. I mean, they've got a veteran quarterback in Schrader, 5th year in college, and they've got an NFL wide receiver. I know technically he's listed as a tight end. Maybe he'll play tight end. Yeah, right. I mean, he is a bona fide. In fact, he's on the Blitnikoff Award watch list. So he is a bona fide receiver, whatever that means. Line up at tight end, line up at wide out. I mean, they're going to move them all over the field because they want to create mismatches and find ways to give them the ball. But they've got a 5th-year quarterback and an NFL wide receiver. And how many teams that they're going to go up against this year will be able to say that? Now, we know the talent at Clemson and Florida State and North Carolina might have the best quarterback in the country. So, right. Outside of those 3, though, if you look at the other 9 games, is anybody going to have a better duo than that duo in terms of, quarterback receiver combination? So, they can't do it alone. And I do think,
sure.
If we talk about question marks with this team, wide receiver is one of my question marks. They need someone to emerge, someone to take some of the pressure off of Rondé Gadsden, because that he's going to get a ton of attention. He's going to get multiple guys watching him, and they're going to need other guys to step up to loosen up that coverage a little bit. So do they have enough weapons in that wide receiver room, and can somebody step up and emerge as a legit number 2 guy? I think that's a really important thing. So they can't do it alone, Chris. But, yeah, I mean, those 2 guys are absolutely the key to this offense. And as you said, maybe the key to the success of this season.
When this podcast airs, we'll be about a couple months away from the start of Syracuse University hoops. Adrian Autry rolling into his first season as head coach of the men's basketball team after a legendary run by Jim Boeheim. How has his leadership been received so far by the program? And is there unfair pressure on him because he's replacing a guy like Jim Boeheim?
That's a great question, Kevin. I mean, listen, the reception has been great. And I know that sometimes this phrase is overused, but I do believe he won the offseason. The way that the transition was made, I feel like the guys that he's been able to bring in, even they lose Joe Girard, they lose Jesse Edwards, but JJ Starling they bring in, who was a local star at Baldwinsville and went to Notre Dame, and then Mike Bray got let go or stepped down, and then JJ now is back, and you get Judah Mintz back from the NBA draft pool. He tested the waters, decided to come back. They take a Chance Westry from Auburn, a guy that almost picked Syracuse the first time around, a top 40 recruit. You get guys like Benny Williams and Chris Bell back in the fold, who a lot of people thought maybe they were going to transfer because of things didn't maybe go the way that they wanted it to when Coach Boeheim was here. So I think all the way around, it does seem like it's been a very good offseason. You asked about pressure, and I would contend that there's not a ton of pressure on him going into next season. I know he's replacing a legend, but I think in some ways he gets a free pass, because it's not like Jim Boeheim left and this program was going to Sweet 16s year in and year out, right? The last couple of years have not gone the way anybody wanted. And there were a lot of people saying it was time for the baton to be passed. It was passed. And I think just the fact that, Autry has said, I'm not going to play a lot of zone. Man-to-man is going to be our primary defense. And you look at the way he's kind of overhauled this roster, and it's a really athletic roster now. He says he's going to play a lot of guys. And right or wrong, I mean, that was a knock against Coach Boeheim, right, is that his rotation was always short, and he refused to play anything other than zone. And so I think just the fact that there are some differences between Autry and Coach Boeheim, I think, is a good thing. I think you look at his schedule; it's a very difficult schedule. I mean, they're in the Maui Invitational. We obviously don't know if that tournament is going to be played or where it's going to be played, and awful what's going on out there in Maui, and we hope everybody out there, is able to recover and rebuild. So I don't know if it's going to take place there, but my guess is the tournament will be played somewhere. And there's, Gonzaga's in that tournament, and Tennessee, and Marquette, and it's loaded with top 25 or expected top 25 teams. So they go out there. They got Tennessee right off the bat. They're going to play another top 20 opponent in the second game. Purdue is out there. It's a possibility they'll play Purdue. So, right off the bat, you're looking at a very difficult tournament. There's the ACC Big Ten Challenge, or ACC SEC Challenge. There's the game against Georgetown. They've built in some really challenging non-conference games in addition to what awaits in the ACC. So, I don't think this is a situation where Coach Boeheim had them in Sweet 16s year in and year out of late, and then Autry comes in and expectations are sky high, and if he doesn't live up to the expectations, people are going to be disappointed. I think expectations have been tempered a little bit over the course of the last couple of years, and I do think, like, if things don't go well next year, I do think there'll be a faction of the fan base that is like, it's Coach Boeheim's fault. These are still some of his players, and let's see what Autry does when he gets his own guys in. So I don't – my personal opinion, I might be in the minority here, but I don't think there's a ton of pressure on him going into next season. I mean, of course he wants to win. They all want to win, but I think fans will be reasonable and understanding, which fans aren't always reasonable and understanding.
Fans is short for fanatics.
Exactly.
Well, from men's hoops to women's hoops, an absolute great hire by the SU to bring back Felicia Leggett-Jack, to a former SU player, Syracuse native, racked up 20 wins in her inaugural season as head coach of the SU women's team. What are the expectations for this year?
Well, I think you're right. They knocked it out of the park. And I don't know if you've had a chance, Chris or Kevin, to hear her speak, but she is a phenomenal speaker. And you will leave there, ready to run through a brick wall for it. I can only imagine what it's like to play for her. They improved their win total. So they won 9 more games than they did the year before, right? They won 11 games and they went to 20. And I think she's just getting started, and that was, keep in mind, that was a brand new roster. They had 11 new players on that roster for a team that had won 11 games and then turned around and won 20 the following year. They get Deasia Fair back, who, again, much like Judah Mintz, she was thinking about going pro, probably could have gone pro, but decided, I'm going to stick it out one more year. This is what's best for my future. And as a result, it's great for Syracuse University. So I think the longer that Felicia is here, and she's fully invested, right? Local products, went to Nottingham, went to SU, was a star at SU. She's always wanted to coach here. This is her destination job, and now she's got it. And I think, brighter days are ahead for this program. And obviously Quentin Hillsman took them to great heights and got them to a national championship game. But, Felicia, I think, is going to have sustained success here. And, Deasia Fair really helped lay the foundation last year with how good she was, what a great scorer she is. She'll be back. So, you asked me what the expectations are. I don't see why they can't win 20-plus games again. And I think the hope, I don't know if it's the expectation, but certainly the hope would be to get back to the NCAA tournament. Maybe they're still a year away from that. But I think, I think brighter days are ahead for this program.
Let's switch gears here. Let's talk a little bit about you here, Steve. So for those of you that do not know, Steve Infanti led Bishop Ludden to a state basketball championship back in 1994. Do you have a favorite memory from that season?
Do I have a favorite memory from that season? You're asking me to go back here. It's been, I cannot believe it's been almost 30 years. The easy one is winning the state title. But for me, it was a little bit different. And I know a lot of people, my family jokes with me because they know the story. And every time I tell the story, they kind of like roll their eyes. But I had mono. I was diagnosed with mono at the state Final Four.
Wow.
So we took the bus ride out to Glens Falls, and the night, so we played Friday, Saturday. So we went out there Thursday night. And on the bus ride out there, I was like, I do not feel well. Like I had a really bad sore throat, and I felt like I had like the flu. So we get there, and it was like an awful night, and I kept up my poor roommate, Jamie Byrne, who was a member of the team, one of my best friends. And I kept him up all night. I was coughing. I couldn't sleep. And sure, I was nervous about the game, but I knew I was sick, and I was like, this is awful. So I told my dad, and my parents were there, and they took me to Glens Falls Hospital. And they ran some tests, and they diagnosed me with mono. And the doctor was like, I can't let him play because with mono, there's the danger of having an enlarged spleen. And if you took a shot there, like if you took an offensive charge or something and it hit you the right way, like you could really, it could be serious. And I mean, I was devastated. Like, anybody who knows me, like I grew up, basketball was my sport, and I worked so hard at it. And my goal was to win a state title, and we were right there. And he said, you can't play. So I begged my dad to like call my childhood doctor back in Syracuse and say, like, can you explain the situation? Like, I have to play. So he did. And, my dad made sure that, my doctor signed off on it, that he wasn't concerned that that was going to die or anything. He talked him through it, and my childhood doctor agreed to let me play and say, listen, be mindful of it, but go out there, do your thing, and everything's going to be fine. And so I played. I played with mono, and fortunately, the semifinal game we won big. I think we won by like 25 plus points. We were up big the whole game, so I didn't have to play all that much. Championship game was tougher, and I just remember like when the horn went off and. It was relief. It was like I made it. The game is over. I survived. It was and it had been this goal that I had been striving for. All 4 years in high school, and it was a sense of relief, certainly joy. And I'll never forget, like our coach Pat Donnelly in the locker room said afterwards, "It's like doesn't matter." Where you guys go, what you do, if you move, across the country, like this core group of 12 players, whatever it was, you will be connected for the rest of your lives. You will always be the first team at Bishop Ludden to win a state championship. And, that kind of resonated with me. And we've had, it seems like every year that ends in a 5 or a 0, the anniversary, we get together, we're honored at the Christmas tournament. We go to Twin Trees and we talk about it. And, we were just there, a year or two ago at Twin Trees, and it's like, you pick up right where you left off, and it doesn't seem like 30 years have gone by. So that's certainly a big memory is winning it. And while I was talking, the only other memory that I will mention to you, you can tell I like talking about the state championship season because it was a highlight, no doubt about it.
Sure.
The state quarterfinal game was a memory for me. We were at Lemoyne College. We were playing Trumansburg. We had lost in the state quarterfinals the year before, and that was supposed to be our year. My junior year was supposed to be our really good team. And that was the blizzard of 93. Our game got moved because of the blizzard of 93. It got delayed a couple days. Our second best player broke his wrist during practice between when the game was supposed to be played and when the game was actually played. And we ended up losing. A kid by the name, he's not a kid anymore, he's my age, but Corey Green at Whitney Point. They beat us by like 5 points. They went to the state final four my junior year. I didn't. We didn't. I was devastated. I thought it was like that was my chance. We missed it. Anyway, fast forward to the next year. We're in the state quarterfinal game again, the game that we lost the year before. We're playing Trumansburg at Lemoyne College. We're up the whole game, but it's a close game. And it comes down to free throws at the end. And I was our best free throw shooter. So it's, get Steve the ball, get fouled. So I go to the line. We're up by 3 with under a minute to go. And I miss a 1-and-1. And Trumansburg gets the rebound. They go down the other end. They hit a 3. They tie the game. They send the game into overtime. I was absolutely devastated. Like I was like, thought it cost our team a chance to go to the Final Four. So anyway, in overtime, same type of situation. We're up by a bucket, and it was out of bounds play. We're in a timeout. Coach Donnelly draws up the play, says, get the ball to Steve, let him get fouled, go back to the free throw line. I can't tell you how much that meant to me. The fact that, I missed my opportunity to steal it. And, Coach showed the faith in me, the confidence in me, get him the ball. He's going to make it this time. And he was right. He got me the ball. I got fouled. I made him this time. we seal the game and we go off to the Final Four. And, you talk about like sports teach people life lessons. Like I will never forget that life lesson for as long as I live, and I hope that I can pass that on to someone else someday, the confidence he instilled in me, because it did mean a lot. And it really did teach me a lot about myself and resiliency and, some of those types of things, and character in the face of adversity. So anyway, I appreciate you bringing up the state title run, because it was certainly the highlight for me as an athlete.
Well, Jordan had the flu game. You had the mono Final Four.
That's right. I had the mono game.
That's exactly what happened. So you obviously are in the broadcast industry. What made you decide to go into this industry or get into this industry? And why did you decide to go to Ithaca College versus SU or Oswego State?
So that's a great question. And honestly, those were the three that I was deciding between. To get into why I wanted to go into broadcasting, growing up, I loved two things. I loved sports and I loved to write. And I would write poems. I would write short stories. I really enjoyed writing, and I love sports, and I wanted to combine my two loves. And so when it was time to pick, a path to go down, a career path or something I wanted to study, I didn't know if I wanted to go into radio or TV or print. I wasn't really sure, but I knew I wanted to do something with sports and being able to write or talk about them. And I'm old enough that I was kind of growing up when ESPN was born and SportsCenter was born, and I loved it. Chris Berman is the first sportscaster I remember watching, saying, "That's so cool. He comes up with all these nicknames, and like I want to be like that." So when it came time to pick a college, I knew I wanted to play basketball. And that's where Oswego comes in. Oswego recruited me, and they really wanted me to go there. And I knew that it had a great program, and obviously Steve Levy and Linda Cohn, and I was serious about Oswego. I went up there for my official visit, and forgive me because this is 25, 30 years ago now. But is the athletic facility at like the top of a hill? Like the
Max Seal Gymnasium.
Yeah.
Okay. So he was giving me a tour, and it was the dead of winter. And I kid you not, like I feel like as I remember the story that it was like 15 below that day. It probably wasn't, but it felt like it.
Sure. Yeah.
And I just remember we opened the door to leave the athletic facility, and this gust of wind hit me. And it was like, I swear to you guys, it felt like it was 20 degrees below zero. Yeah. And I was like, I told my dad when we got in the car, I was like, I can't go here. and I grew up in Syracuse. Like I grew up in Central New York. So that was like, the stupid 17-year-old in me talking, like that was a dumb reason. But I was like, I can't go here. Like it was too cold, So it came down between Ithaca and Syracuse. And I didn't know if I could walk on at Syracuse. I thought about it. Like, it's a Newhouse school. And, they were going to give me a half academic scholarship. And, I thought about it, but ultimately I decided to go to Ithaca. I went to a small high school. I went to Bishop Ludden. Ithaca is a smaller school. It was ability to get away, right? Because I was from Syracuse, and I know Ithaca is not too far, but it's away enough that you're away at school, right? And I wanted to play, I wanted to play basketball, and so I chose to go to Ithaca. The basketball career down there didn't work out the way that I had hoped, but I got to a point my junior year where I was like, do I want to keep doing this? I probably wasn't going to get much playing time, or do I want to start, diving into what I want to do someday. So I played 2 years down there. I ended up not playing my junior year. And I got more involved with broadcasting. I started calling the basketball games. I was calling football games. And that's really where I started to work on my craft and to get better at, all of us starting out, we're not very good in this business. So that was, you get better by doing it, getting in front of a microphone, getting reps. And I was able to do that. And, Ithaca was great for me. I met Matt Mulcahy there, who he's an Ithaca grad and longtime news anchor here at Channel 3. And I met him at a career day. He said, how about an internship? I was like, I would love that. And he helped me get an internship at Channel 3. And that was kind of my first taste of the TV business. And I fell in love with it. And I was like, I want to do this. And so I interned at Channel 3 for a few years. And then when I graduated, ended up landing a job at the ABC in Binghamton. And that was the start of it.
Well, here at Channel 9 in Syracuse, you have this very popular segment, Friday Night Fever, which basically features high school sports, review basketball, football, and all the other high school sports. What do you say we throw in a little extra soccer highlights every now and then? There's a lot of talented soccer players out there in the area.
There certainly are. And I was talking to you guys off air that my daughter, Emma, who is now at Syracuse University, played soccer growing up her whole life. My son, Luke, is a senior at West Hill, and he's been a soccer player since he was like 4. I certainly take in my fair share of soccer. This isn't going to be a great answer for you, Chris, but part of the reason is it's resources, and we do show soccer during playoff time, yes, generally, or if there's a big game, but it's hard because you could go to, not to give away too many of our secrets when it comes to Friday Night Fever, but you put, everything's strategic in terms of geography. We'll try to put 3 games together that, you can hit these 3 games. You stay for 20 minutes, you get a couple of touchdowns, you move on to the next one. As you know, Chris, the game of soccer sometimes got
to wait around a little bit.
Not all that high scoring. So you might be in a game for an hour and a half and get no goals or 1 goal. And so that is part of it. And I know it's not a great answer, but that is part of why it's, mainly football and basketball. You can get in, get out pretty quickly at games. You don't have to stay the whole game. You stay for a quarter or you stay for 15 or 20 minutes of real time. You get a couple of highlights and you move on to the next one. And then you try to tell the story of the game. So, and it's hard in soccer. If you don't get goals and the final's 2-0, it's hard to be like, well, when we left, so-and-so scored twice and that's the game. So that's part of it. But we do try to, make up for that during playoff time.
But you do bring up a great point about, how television kind of works with, well, you kind of have to squeeze this in here and squeeze this in there. And, that's kind of how we came about with this podcast, is we wanted to talk about some of that stuff too, behind the scenes, like how things work. And that's an excellent thing you bring up for those that are listening, that are students, wherever you go to college. That's something you have to think about when you're trying to do a show like that. Yeah.
I mean, there's no doubt about that, people wonder how we're able to put on, 15 games, of highlights that night. And there is a lot of strategy. There's a lot of planning. It's not, we don't just say we don't just randomly go out to different games. I mean, it's, we generally have 4 or 5 people out shooting. So we have 3 of us in sports, and then they usually give us a couple of news photographers, and we try to get to, each get to 3 or 4 games. And, also taking into account, all right, this team's probably going to blow out this team, so I'm going to go there first. This one's going to be tight, so I'm going to hit that one last and hope to get the 4th quarter of that one. And there's definitely planning that goes into this. We have these conversations throughout the week about where we want to go. This game's not going to be a really good game. We should really drive the extra 10 minutes and go to this high school because this is a big game for them, and it's for first place or whatever the case may be. So, yeah, I mean, there's definitely a lot of planning that goes into it.
It's hours of work, hours of footage, all for a couple of minutes.
Just a few minutes.
It is. It's funny because whenever I speak to a class, like when I speak to a high school class, I use the analogy of Thanksgiving dinner. And I say, it's like you spend 4 or 5 hours cooking this feast, and then in the matter of, a few minutes, it's gone, and I say that we do that twice a day. We cook Thanksgiving dinner twice a day. We spend 4 or 5 hours getting ready for the 6 o'clock show. After 4 or 5 minutes, it's done. And then you take a quick break, and then you use the rest of your night, the next 3 hours to get ready for the 11, and the same thing happens. So it's, there is some truth to that.
Coming up in the January, Steve, you'll be marking 25 years at News Channel 9. I mean,
it's crazy.
It is crazy. What are some of your favorite moments from your time at Channel 9? I'm sure there are plenty.
Yeah, I mean, there definitely are plenty. Man, wasn't expecting that question. One of the first big stories I ever worked on was I got to go down to Philadelphia and spend 2 days with Donovan McNabb when it was his first year as a starter down there. And we went down there, we went to his house. We did like an MTV Cribs style interview where he showed us around his house. We did an interview while I played pool with him. We played 1 game of pool. I won the game, so I'll never forget that. That was quite the treat. We went to practice with them. They gave us great access. That was really cool. That was one of my favorite stories, and that was, it was pretty early in my career at Channel 9. Certainly covering, Final Fours, rises to that level. A lot of people will ask me about the 2003 national championship game. I may have been the only person in Syracuse that did not see Hakeem Warwick's block live because I was actually on the air. I was on the set. He blocked that shot at like 11:31 p.m. And the sportscast starts at 11:27. So it was it's the type of thing where I'm on the air, it's happening, producers telling me in my ear what is happening. And actually when Warwick blocked the shot, they told me that the game was over. And as you know, he blocked the shot with like a second left, and then there was the air ball. So thank God they didn't, that shot didn't go in, because, I'm wrapping up my sportscast and I'm saying that, Hakeem Warwick blocked the shot, Syracuse national champs. And then there was actually another second to be played. But, certainly the whole aftermath from that, and covering Carmelo and, covering Jerry McNamara, and then getting to know Jerry very well, as a coach. And, those have been special things, certainly. There's too many memories to name, but those are a few of them.
Do you feel, and as a sports anchor, having covered local sports all this time, do you feel that interest in local sports coverage has increased over the years?
Yeah, I mean, what we try to do, and I mean, it's, we're not reinventing the wheel here, but we try and keep it as local as possible. We want to give people something that they can't get on ESPN, for instance, so that's why we're heavy into high school, certainly heavy into Syracuse University athletics and local colleges. I mean, we've got another Division I school now with Lemoyne going Division I, the great, Division III schools that we have. We've spent a lot of time recently covering Oswego hockey and Oswego basketball. What Jason Leon's a childhood friend of mine, and to see the success he's having at Oswego, with the basketball program has been great. But that's why we try to be as local as possible. High schools, local colleges, SU, Bills, Jets, Giants, Yankees, Mets. I mean, we'll dabble into those, but it's not necessarily a focus for us. And so, yeah, I mean, I think parents love seeing their kids on, and that's really why we started Friday Night Fever. That I was a local athlete, and, we always used to, go to Twin Trees after the games and, try to catch a highlight or two of us. We're like, well, let's do this on a bigger scale, and so we started Friday Night Fever, and it's, it's gone very well. I think the appetite is certainly there. People love it. We love doing it, and it's a great way for us to serve the community and be connected with the community.
I remember like where I was the moment I heard the news that the New York Mets were purchasing the Syracuse affiliate. Like, I almost fell out of my chair. But I think it was just such great news that now we have, like, for me in Cortland, I have the AAA affiliate 45 minutes north. They got the AA affiliate about 45 minutes south. So it's like Central New York is like Met Central these days.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, there's no doubt. And I'll say this, like, this is a great sports time. And I'm glad you brought up Syracuse Mets. I mean, we've got AAA baseball, we've got AHL hockey, in addition to, now 2 Division I colleges here within a stone's throw, and, all the high schools that I think it really is, to me, it's an underrated sports market. I mean, we're very busy 10 months out of the year. It'll slow down a little bit, late June through July, but then, first week of August, SU reports back to camp, and off we go. And we're busy for the next 10 months. So, through basketball, lacrosse season, and baseball and all that. So I love working here. I think it really is an underrated sports market, in my opinion.
One last question for you, Steve. You're on top of all the other stuff you do. You're an adjunct professor of broadcast and digital journalism at the Newhouse School at Syracuse. When Chris and I were at Oswego, and a lot of our classmates 25 years ago, we wanted to be TV reporters and play-by-play guys and publish, front page news articles for the big city paper. What are today's students? What are they looking to do in their careers?
I mean, that's a great question. I think, everybody's different. I do think it seems like anyway, there are more and more opportunities out there, to get involved, whether that's on a digital platform or, sports betting is becoming a big thing. I've got a few former students now that are working in that space and doing very well with it. So, it's not just sports anchors and local news. And it's the 6 o'clock news and the 11 o'clock news. Like, there are a lot of other ways to get involved in this business. Every team's got sideline reporters now and pre and post game shows. And not that those things didn't exist before, but I do think that it's on a grander scale now. So, I'll work with students of all abilities and in terms of what they want to do. There's some that want to do play-by-play. Some want to be sideline reporters. There's some that want to do what I do in local news. As I said, I've had a couple students go into that sports gambling space and do very well as analysts. Esports is becoming a thing. So I think there are all sorts of different avenues that people can go down. And, it's been fun for me, while the industry changes, for me to kind of change with it. And, they do keep me young and sharp. Like, I'm teaching them things, but they teach me things too. I mean, for real, like social media and whatnot, and, Instagram and Twitter. And, the younger generation is better at that stuff, if we're being honest, than we are.
No question.
That helps me kind of stay young and stay sharp as well.
Yeah. I mean, this whole podcasting thing, crazy.
Yeah.
It didn't exist when we went to school.
Right. Exactly.
Let's be honest. But here we are.
Steve, thank you so much for taking the time to join us. We really appreciate it. And, best wishes. I know it's a few months away, but still congrats on 25 years of Channel 9 and hopefully many more.
I appreciate you saying that. And this was a whole lot of fun, guys. Thank you. And Chris, hopefully I'll see you at a high school soccer game in the not too distant future. And Kevin, it was great catching up with you. It's been a while. It was really good to see you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Steve.
And that was Steve Infanti, sports director and co-host of Bridge Street on News Channel 9, also host of Orange Nation, which covers SU athletics on News Channel 9. That's a weekly show on News Channel 9 and a daily show on ESPN Radio Syracuse. So great to have him on, and all this talk about college sports returning. And again, keep in mind we recorded this when you're hearing it, it's after Labor Day, but we recorded it before then, around the time of year when all the students are moving back to campus. And I know, well, Chris, you live in the Syracuse area. I live in Cortland. I'm like a mile away from the SUNY Cortland campus. Ithaca is a huge college town between Cornell and Ithaca College. So when the students move back, know it. You are fully aware.
Kevin, let me tell you something about these college kids moving in, okay? Listen. First of all, slow the hell down on the highway and stop cutting people off. Okay. Jersey plates and Michigan plates and freaking Massachusetts, especially Massachusetts plates. Slow down. What are you in a rush for? Want to get back to campus and drink already? Yeah. I haven't even started yet. Yeah. And let me tell you something else about these kids coming into college and filling up our parking lots and the Wegmans, the local supermarkets around here. All right. Learn how to drive in a parking lot. First of all, stop causing accidents. All right. Because that has happened already.
Oh my God.
And not only in the supermarket, or I'm sorry, not only out of the supermarket in the parking lot, in the supermarket too. All right. Stop crashing into people. Pay attention.
Get off your phone. Oh God.
Get off your phone. Unless you've got a list on your phone and you're looking up and looking at your list and looking up, pay attention. Pay attention, kids. I'm guilty of looking at my phone in the supermarket, but I have a list on my phone. That's what I do. And then I put it away and I take the cart and I go where I need to go. And I look at my list again and I put it down and I go where I need to go again. This is the old man shaking his fist.
Now, they're not, we would love if Microsoft sponsored our podcast. So, if you're listening, Microsoft, please. But I use OneNote on my phone for my grocery list. So, because you can add a checkbox to each item in OneNote. So like, I got the chicken, check that off, and then check this off, and then check that off. So it's really nice. I recommend, and it's cloud-based, right? So you can like use OneNote from anywhere on your phone, on your laptop, wherever you are. So that's what I like about that. So that's where my grocery lists are. And For some reason, I still have ones from years ago in case
in case you forgot something.
To know, what did I buy 2 years ago? But yeah, to your point, Chris, yes, the traffic picks up, and
oh my God,
the Walmarts are insane.
I won't step foot in a Walmart. Not around this time of the year, or Target for that matter.
Oof.
Or any of the big box retail stores. No, forget it. Like the supermarket is a necessity because, I need to eat too. And my kid is eating me out of house and home and food and all that stuff. Like, good Lord. He's grown. He's grown. He's going to be as tall as I am. Actually, he's almost as tall as I am already. I'm 6'1". He's 5'9.5" already.
And climbing. Yeah.
Yeah. But we digress. Those damn college kids. Slow down on the streets. You're going to kill somebody.
Yeah. Listen, Chris, we were college kids too once, right? So we got to give them.
That's true. We were, but and we were rushing back to the campus to have a beverage and get together with your friends and hang out and yeah, I get it. But come on, slow down, will you? And
yeah.
But here's the difference, though, Kevin, is they're all in their phones.
Yeah.
They're all on their phones, even when they're driving. Like, that's dangerous, right? I mean,
yeah.
Can we get back to that story from Steve Infanti about his high school basketball triumphant state championship story? That actually gave me some goosebumps. Like, that was a cool story. That was like MJ flu game stuff right there. Heroic Steve Infanti coming in and like you said, didn't play much in the first game in the semifinals, but in the finals they needed him. And that sense of relief and that, I mean, just the idea of winning a championship of any sort. And his coach is right. Like, you're going to have that connection with your team for your entire life.
Right.
Whether you live in this area and someone lives across the country, you're still going to have that in common. And you're still going to get, keep in touch with each other, which is, that's a fantastic story.
You're right. And look, how many people can say that they won, took home a state? But I sure can't.
Me either. I played, right. I mean, I played high school soccer and we were lucky to win a few games a year, and I can't imagine getting to a playoff or a sectional. And a state championship was, that was always out of the question for us, but my God. Yeah. I mean, that's a really cool thing. That's a really cool story. But yeah. And also the story about the quarterfinals is really cool too. Having his coach having the confidence in him to go back to the line, even though he had missed, the front of the one-on-one and clinching a game.
It sets a path for you because if his coach had sat him, said, nope, you missed, you're it's over for you. Then your psyche is toast at that point. Yeah, for sure. Absolutely. Yeah. That's a good point. All right. I think that'll do it for this edition of the Throwing Bagels podcast. Thank you so much for joining us. We got a blog coming up next week. Jason's on that. And then in a couple of weeks, very exciting, we'll be talking with Joe Yerdon and Alex Russo, our two Throwing Bagels podcast hockey experts.
Repeat customers.
That's right. Our first repeat guests. We'll be doing an NHL preview. So we're going to run through the gamut, and we'll talk about who's winning the cup this year, how good will the Sabres be, how good will the Rangers be, and if you couldn't have planned it any better, because opening night, since Joe covers the Sabres and Alex covers the NHL in general, but she's a big Ranger fan, so first game of the season is Rangers Sabres, so he couldn't have planned it out any better than that. Perfection. Absolutely. So we're looking forward to that in a couple of weeks. So thanks again to Steve Infanti for joining us. And thank you, Chris. And
thank you, Kevin. And thanks to Steve again.
And thanks to Steve and Jason. Thank you from afar. I know you're on assignment in Plattsburgh. Hopefully you come back with maybe a Michigan hot or whatever it is that they serve up there in Plattsburgh.
With a tennis ball.
And what the hell? Maybe some bagels. Jay, just throw some bagels while you're up there. Show them how it's done. So we'll see you again in a couple of weeks. us. Check us out online, throwingbagels.com, or all our social media is there. You can email us, throwingbagelspodcast@gmail.com. You got any guest ideas, anything you want us to talk about, any questions for us, for me, for Chris, for Jason, shoot us over an email, throwingbagelspodcast@gmail.com, or reach out to us on our social media. That's what it's there for.
It sure is.
So we'll see you again soon. Bye.
See you.